Hi everybody. In this video, I'm going to explain the Makam Nihavend. This is the same thing as Nahawand in Arabic. I'm showing it on a Turkish oud, so it's Turkish tuning. Basically, this Makam corresponds very closely to the Western minor scale, right? Specifically, this is D minor. So this corresponds very closely to Western natural and harmonic minor. So both versions of the seventh are used. So let me start by just sort of showing the natural minor scale from D. So like this. Now, if we wanted to do harmonic minor from here, this becomes like that. Now, you might have noticed from here that this part that I played in the harmonic minor, I was slightly crunching the augmented second. So like that. The reason I did that is, if you've seen my Hijaz video, the augmented second in Hijaz gets kind of crunched. So it's common to think of that upper part of the Nihavend scale where you're using the harmonic minor version. It's common to think of that as a modulation to Hijaz, right? So that rather than that harmonic minor, you're using this rather than that augmented second, you're using this crunched version, okay? So far this is fairly straightforward. Any Turkish or Arabic or whatever song that you hear that sort of closely fits, that you could play simply using minor notes on a guitar or a piano, you can think of that as most of the time as Nihavend. Now, this Makam is also very open to modulations, which are common, which modulate to some of the more characteristically Eastern Makams. Actually, the one that I just showed with the augmented second, we can think of that as a Hijaz modulation, right? So right, let's say I'm here. Right. So you can think of what I just did there as a sort of short modulation to Hijaz from A, right? Which is from the fifth. Another thing, that I did there that you might have noticed, so something like that is, that's clearly something from Western music. It works very nicely in this Makam. So you can do that combination of the 1 chord and the 5 chord where, this is D minor and that's A major, right? Something like this. So besides the Hijaz modulation, another common thing to do is to modulate to the sort of Husseini Ushak Bayati family from the fifth. So remember again that this here is the fifth, right? So what I did there is I started with the sort of Husseini family from A and then went back to Nihavend. Okay, so let me do it one more time. This is sort of some typical phrase in Nihavend. Right. So what I did there is by sort of introducing this note, this half flat, I established that we're modulating to a different makam. Right, as soon as you start hearing that stuff, it sort of establishes that we're temporarily somewhere else. And then you would want to get back to the original Nihavend. So, right, so this kind of establishes that you're back to the sort of, the minor. Like that. Okay. A couple other little modulations that you can do. So once I introduce this idea, right, this is the sort of, like I said, this Husseini, or, Ushak or Bayati, but I can also add this fourth note, right, which makes a modulation to Saba. Okay. That's also an easy modulation to do from Husseini because it's essentially a one-note addition, right? The beginning of it is the same, but when you add this sort of flat fourth, then you're adding a Saba to it. There are a lot of, there are all sorts of other things you can do from here. Minor and major actually fit together pretty well. So something like that, so this Nihavend is used a lot in sort of more classical as opposed to folk music from Turkey and the Arab world, and sort of modulations between makams is more common in that style of music. So in a lot of sort of longer, more complex pieces like semais and stuff, you can find a lot of modulations, and I'll post a link to one of them that has a lot of that. So, one more thing to say about this makam is that it's sort of used a lot in music from a time period when there was a lot of Western influence, sort of starting in late 19th century. And a lot of the kind of sort of ornamentations that you find in stuff from that time period is very much sort of, to my ears at least, taken from Western music. So some of the stylistic stuff, you can find these sort of chromatic ornamentations that uses the note, that always uses the note that's a half step below the note that you're playing. So let's say, okay, so here, this phrase so far is just Nihavend because I'm just using the sharp version of the seventh, right? Now I go down to the flat version. So what I did there basically is just a kind of line where I'm taking it down a step, but wherever I can, whenever I have a sort of whole step below a note, I'm just crunching it and I'm sort of sharpening the note one below, right? So those kinds of phrases, they wouldn't sound that out of place in sort of 19th century classical music, or all sorts of music from Eastern Europe or something. But they also don't sound at all out of place within the context of Nihavend, right? They would sound very much out of place in sort of folk music from the Middle East, but that stuff is very commonly used in more classical music, especially from that time period. So we have this makam that is sort of very closely corresponds to Western music, and in common practice, you can add in all sorts of things that either sound like, more Eastern usages of the minor scale, or more sort of Western usage, right, that combines it with sort of more chromatic notes and harmony. And then there's also a lot of places where you can fill in sort of modulations to the more typically Eastern makams. So I'm gonna just do a quick taksim now that tries to combine a lot of this stuff, maybe with some other modulations too that you can try to piece together.